Hi, Elias. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you said, my name's Elias. My last name's Bitar. I'm a restaurant owner and, gosh, I hate this term, but philanthropist? I don't know. I like to help people in my spare time between businesses and 5 kids and all that stuff. So that's who I am. Who are you?
My name's Alexis Decker. I am the executive director of ILJ DV, Immigration Law and Justice of the Delaware Valley. And unlike you, I only have 1 kid and I have no spare time. So that's all I do.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about your organization,
Sure.
ILJ DV.
ILJ DV is Immigration Law and Justice of the Delaware Valley. We are one branch of a larger national organization, Immigration Law and Justice Network, and we serve New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania.
So what's the difference between what ILJ DV does and a private immigration attorney?
That's a great question. There's actually really no difference. We provide the same services, maybe a smaller subset of services just based on our capacity, but we provide the same level of quality of services to our clients. The only difference is that we provide them to clients that can't afford to go to a private immigration attorney.
Why does ILJ matter to you?
I got into immigration law in law school, actually. I did kind of a unconventional internship in law school in refugee resettlement, and I fell in love with it. I absolutely loved it. And from there, I studied asylum law with a former immigration judge who became one of my mentors and friends. And then after that, I dove in and worked in immigration, and I loved serving the clients that we had and doing immigration work.
So you said you fell in love with it, and I'm assuming that has something to do with the people that you served.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. Yeah, the clients that I've had have been some of the most amazing people that I've ever met. Their stories have stayed with me, and it's been a real pleasure and joy to work with them.
So we know that immigration is sort of a hot button subject, especially now in an election year, which I feel like we're always in an election year. But what do you wish people knew about the clients that you serve? I mean, you said that they are all extraordinary people, and there's some incredible resilience and amazing stories. But what do you wish people knew about, the path that these people have to go through?
Something that I wish people knew is if they were to really sit down with probably any of the clients that ILJ DV serves, or probably most immigration attorneys serve, they would find their story incredibly sympathetic. They would probably find that they have more in common with those people, with them than not. Their parents, their daughters and sons and family members, and most of them, and certainly everybody that I have ever worked with, just wants to do what everyone else wants to do, what all of us want to do: work and support their families, go to school, and raise their children. I
want to kind of peel back a little bit and talk about, some misconceptions in immigration. I think that there are many. And even though, despite the fact that immigration is a hot button subject, I think that a lot of people are unaware about, the way our immigration system works.
Sure.
You and I were talking off camera about, sort of your story, and that at some point, when you first entered law school, you didn't really even know the way the system works.
Absolutely.
And so, maybe talk about some immigration law basics.
That's a great point, Elias. So firstly, I would say that nothing happens automatically. I think that's a really common misconception. People think that, if someone marries a United States citizen, they automatically become a citizen. If someone crosses the border, they automatically get, certain paperwork that entitles them to stay. Really very few things, if anything, probably nothing, is automatic in immigration. Oh. And we can see that in the backlogs that we have in the 2 of the main agencies of immigration, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, the Immigration Court, and USCIS, which handles affirmative applications. Those backlogs run into several years, even just to get a simple work permit, which, by the way, is something that has to be applied for and approved. So very few things are automatic, and things take a very, very long time.
So going back to, sort of the political climate and the polarization,
Sure.
I think that, like you said, there are a lot of misconceptions about, somebody crossing the border and getting immediate asylum.
Yes.
I think that it's important to validate people's concerns about the immigration system, regardless of what side you're on.
Absolutely.
And the purpose of your organization and, immigration law practiced, the right way is to lessen the chaos, right? Would you say?
Yes.
And the err on the side of our legal system, of the laws that exist.
Yes.
Right? So could you talk to that point a little bit?
Absolutely, Elias. I think that's a great point. First of all, as attorneys and as Department of Justice representatives, if an organization has those, our duty, our job is to ensure that, of course, we're following the law, advocating for our clients, within the bounds of the law. And so that's something that we take very seriously. That's one of the primary benefits, I would say, of having an immigration attorney involved in an immigration case, is because, as I mentioned before, there are extreme backlogs in the courts and before USCIS. Immigration attorneys and accredited representatives can kind of grease those wheels so that the case goes a little bit more smoothly for the judge and, of course, for the client, giving them the best opportunity to win their case if they're legally eligible for the benefit that we're trying to get for them.
So, okay, going back to ILJ, right? So why is an organization like ILJ even necessary? Because, I know that whenever I've been to traffic court, for example, you always hear the judge saying that you have the right to legal representation, right? Yeah. So don't these people have, aren't they, if they can't afford it, aren't they assigned a court representative?
That's a really great question. And that's also a common probably misconception that people might have. So technically under the law, there is a right to an attorney of one's own choosing if you are in immigration court, but we kind of think of it as a hollow right because unlike in criminal court, for example, where if you cannot afford a lawyer, from TV, everybody knows one will be appointed to you. That's not how it works in immigration court. You basically, if you can't afford an attorney, you're on your own and you're representing yourself pro se, as we say, you're representing yourself. And something important to point out too is that when people go to immigration court, of course, the proceedings are in English. There's a judge, there's an ICE attorney. So there's an attorney representing the government with, the full support and weight of the United States government, all the resources behind them. And while proceedings are translated into Spanish or whatever language the client may need, of course, a little something is always lost. And to be in an unfamiliar situation, trying to listen to the interpretation and pay attention to what's going on, it can be very, very overwhelming. So that's where organizations like ILJ DV come in for someone that cannot afford immigration legal services in cases that are extremely dire in some, in most of our cases. We come in and we provide high quality immigration legal services free of charge. And another difference too, I guess, between criminal court and immigration court is that generally in criminal court, the burden is on the state to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt. But in immigration court, most of the burden lies with the individual, with the immigrant, to prove affirmatively that they reach very high legal standards to get the benefit that they're applying for. For example, asylum.
How would you describe the service that you provide your clients?
If we take, for example, those clients that are in removal proceedings, as they're referred to, or immigration court, so the government is in the process of deporting them or trying to deport them usually because they don't have the correct paperwork or they didn't have the correct paperwork to enter the United States. Our job is to apply for and hopefully get a form of relief for them. So they're in proceedings to be deported. One of the defenses to being deported can be a valid claim for asylum. And so we prepare their asylum case to be presented to the immigration court at a final hearing. In an asylum case, which can take, I've logged personally that those cases can take 200 hours or more to prepare. Wow. It's a very, very high legal bar. So we do everything. Our ILJ DV attorney prepares the application, and that entails multiple interviews with the client in their native language to make sure that all the details are correct and presented. Looking for evidence in the home country, so birth certificates, death certificates, different forms of proof, writing a legal brief, and basically preparing the case to be presented before the immigration judge.
What's a notario?
A notario is essentially a notary who may be taking advantage of the cultural difference between what a notary is in another country, perhaps say in Central America and the United States. Notaries in the United States are not automatically licensed to practice law, whereas in some countries they are. And so they may take advantage of the fact that people come to the United States thinking that a notary can practice law when really they can't. And they charge clients sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to basically provide ultimately no help, and sometimes put the client in a worse position than they would have been had they not even gone. So that's why an organization like ILJ DV is an excellent alternative to going to a notary. We provide high quality actual immigration legal services so that clients don't feel the need to go to a notary.
So what happens to people who don't find representation?
That's a great question. I would say probably more people don't find representation, unfortunately, than do. People who don't find representation are forced to represent themselves. It's really an uphill battle. There are websites that you can go to that publish each immigration judge's grant and denial rates of certain forms of relief, like asylum. And there are judges around the country that routinely deny upwards of 99% of the claims that come in front of them. And that's even with an attorney. So you can imagine what it would be like for someone to try to represent themselves as opposed to having an attorney. And in many cases, people who are forced to represent themselves are ultimately ordered removed because they can't get their case across in the way that an attorney might be able to help them, even though they may be eligible for what they're applying for.
Aside from defending asylum cases, what other immigration services do you guys provide?
Defending asylum cases is just one piece of what we do. It's a very large piece of what we do, but we do many different types of cases. Another very important type of case that we do is seek something called special immigrant juvenile status for unaccompanied minors. So basically, children in the United States who have been abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both of their parents. We can seek this SIJ status for them and basically put them on a path to getting residency, getting a green card, and ultimately one day becoming a citizen. And these are some of the most rewarding types of cases that our attorney does, because that puts kids on a path to being able to study, to get medical benefits, and ultimately to get a green card.
So what does it take to defend an asylum claim, and what are some of the obstacles that you face? Because I know it's very difficult.
And it's getting more and more difficult basically every so often with new laws and new procedures coming down. But generally, it is incredibly difficult to defend an asylum claim. There's a famous quote that immigration court is like having a death penalty case in a traffic court. These stakes for these types of cases are extremely high. To seek asylum, generally someone has to have experienced or fear torture or death or harm rising to those levels in their home country. And people have to convey these cases in immigration court in order to be able to stay. In addition to having to prepare the case and file everything on time and properly and comply with the manual and the judge's tastes. They're doing that against a very complex backdrop.
You were saying that unlike other court proceedings, the burden of proof is on the client.
Exactly. So the burden of proof rests with an immigrant to prove that they're eligible for this form of relief. And as we can imagine, because of the type of case that this is, an asylum claim, many people, if not all, are dealing with some form of PTSD or complex PTSD, both from what happened in their home country, to say nothing of the journey that they went through to come to the United States. Some of them have walked basically or taken public transportation from Central America, South America, fleeing the circumstances that led them to come to the United States. I've seen pregnant women. I've seen mothers carrying toddlers, people coming with their whole family. Some people send young children, young boys by themselves. So these people, when they come into court, they're carrying all of these things in addition to all the necessities of daily life. They're going to work, they're supporting their families, they're trying to go to school. And so they're seeking to defend this case against the backdrop of all these other things that they have going on. And so the best thing that we can do for them is take that legal piece off their plate so that we prepare that piece for them so that they can focus on all the things that they need to do to support themselves and their families.
So it's easy to see the service that you provide to the immigrants, but essentially you're also providing a service to the immigration system at large by vetting some of these cases and differentiating, the stronger and the weaker cases, and accepting the ones that have, legal viability. You're kind of expediting the system.
As attorneys and representatives, our ethics dictate that we defend cases that have legal merit, of course. And so there's that piece, and there's also the piece that attorneys can move things along in a smooth fashion and comply with timeliness deadlines and the deadlines that the court has. And so, as you say, it really does benefit everyone, the individual immigrant and also the justice system at large, for immigrants to have representation.
So I'm sure people are wondering how they can help ILJ DV. I come from a food bank background, and at the food bank, there are a number of ways you can help. You can donate money, you can volunteer hours, you can donate food. How can people help ILJ DV?
So we always appreciate when people would like to help ILJ DV. People can visit our website with our phone number and our address, our information. We're also looking to increase our board capacity. So if people believe that they would be interested in perhaps seeing what it would be like to join our board, if they think that they would be a good fit, they can reach out to us. Another thing that we're always looking for is qualified people to help translate documents on a volunteer basis. That's very helpful. As we discussed, a lot of the documents that we get are in someone's native language, and we need to translate them to be used in court. Likewise, people can volunteer to help interpret interviews with clients that we have. And finally, something that's always helpful for us is making a donation to the work that we do.